Here I show how to install Visual Studio 2019. If you have a prior version of Visual Studio installed, uninstall it and install Visual Studio 2019. Visual Studio, if you type in the words Visual Studio with a .com after it, will redirect you. If you type in visualstudio.com and press enter, you will be redirected to this page, visualstudio.microsoft.com, which looks like this page. There are two ways to download from this page. Up at the top there is a box that says Free Visual Studio, and down on the left side there is an item which says Download Visual Studio, and the one that you want, the free version, is Community 2019. Both of these links take you to this page. Visual Studio presents an object in the middle here where you can see this, and it says you have chosen to open Visual Studio Community.exe. Says, would you like to save this file? Click Save, and then save it to the desktop. Now, sometimes when it comes up, it will ask you if you wish to just run it immediately. You can do that. Sometimes if you have slower internet connections, that can be a problem. So, you can choose which way you want to do it. Also, if you had chosen to choose free Visual Studio up at the top, you will be presented with this screen. Just from that screen, click Download. You get the same screen, and eventually you get the same pop-up. Now let's start the installation process. You have to say yes in order to install the program. Click Continue. It will start downloading the necessary installation files, and then it will install the install files necessary to begin the entire process. This is a little convoluted, but it doesn't take too long to do this part. Once the two blue lines have completed, then Microsoft does its little swirly up here. Okay, so now you get the installation screen. This is a screen which can be extremely difficult to understand for beginners. There's a section here which is specifically called .NET Desktop Development. We definitely want that because this is a .NET course. Within this, over here to the right, there are a variety of things, most of which the defaults are already checked, but I also want you to go ahead and check the .NET frameworks over here for the version 4. I'm having a little bit of trouble getting that one. Okay. So that includes C#, Visual Basic, and F#, which you won't find at the school, and also Windows Forms, which we use. So really, all we really need here is .NET Desktop Development. Just do an install. So go down to the bottom and to install. It says thank you for installing. While Visual Studio is installing, we'd like to ask you a few questions. I don't want to play with the survey. It doesn't change anything. Now I have a fast internet connection, so if this is seemingly going faster than yours, don't worry. I'm going to do an edit here in a moment. Okay, we're almost finished at this point. Now there's a check mark there that said start after installation, which was there from the beginning, and so it's going to do that. First thing you'll see there's the splash screen for Visual Studio. says connect to all developer services, including Azure, and publishing code to a private Git repository, and all of that. You are prompted to either sign in to one or create one. You're also allowed to, not now, maybe later. Now, I have actually two accounts, in as much that I have my private account and I also have my school account. If you have a Central Methodist account, it is counted as an Outlook account. The school's private Outlook domain is centralmethodist.edu, and as such you can use that. For now, I'm just going to say not now, maybe later. You can use a particular color theme. I typically use blue, but that's up to you. Some people like the dark theme. You can use a light theme. There's also this blue extra contrast. And again, you can change these later, so you don't really have to do anything here. So start Visual Studio here at the bottom. Now it's going to sit there and it's going to say your evaluation period has ended. Please sign in to unlock the product. I guess it's going to force me to do this anyway. Not a big deal. Let's see. Okay, so I get to this particular screen, and you have choices of clone or check out code, open project or solution, open a local folder, or create new project. Okay, now I'm going to briefly go through create new project, but I'm going to have a separate video on creating a project and starting with the new thing, because you will need that for your first couple of projects in the tasks that you have in week 1. Okay, so you'll create one, and now this is where it gets a little complicated. If you have used prior versions of Visual Studio, this is kind of annoying. You can leave the language thing alone, but platform, you'll have to choose Windows. Project type, you'll have to choose you can choose desktop or whatever. All of these types of things, actually, a lot of these you can ignore, but it narrows this down. Now you'll see that I've just chosen a small amount of type there, and you'll see C# and class library, console app, Windows Forms app. A lot of the stuff that we're going to be doing here is going to be Windows Forms app, and you'll see that's for this, and you can choose this and then click next. It asks for a project name. I highly recommend that you give it some sort of meaningful name. It's going to complain until I do. So let's say week 1, task 1, just as an example. the location that it stores programs by default is kind of meaningless for most people, especially the first time. So go over here to the three dots and choose something a little bit more meaningful, like, oh, I don't know, desktop, where you'll be able to find it no matter what. Select folder. So it creates a folder for it in this particular item. Project name and solution name. I'll explain a little bit more about the differences between projects and solutions, but for now, pretty much everything that you do in this course will have the same project name and solution name. Place the solution and project in the same directory. You can check that, don't check that, it really doesn't matter to me. And then the framework, this is the latest framework. If you use one of the older ones, I'll have the older ones installed, so it's not a problem either way. Click Create. Okay, so we have our project. One of the things that I want to make clear when we're doing this is that we have toolboxes, and one of the toolboxes that we use fairly frequently is our components and stuff like that. Now, at the moment, they're all chosen like this. In order to make this a little bit easier, you'll see a little thumbtack up here. Click the thumbtack and it'll push this form to the right so that you can see the items over here and also the entire form. That way, when you are grabbing something and dragging it over here, then it's easy to work with. Okay. You can also anchor this one by putting a thumbtack. It will work for that particular project and only that project, whereas the toolbox will stick around like that for every project that you do. Okay, so I'm not going to do anything significant here. I'll wait and do that in the example where I show you how to do things and creating a program. But at least now we know that this is installed. So at this point, you can go up here to the close button and close this. It'll say save changes. Then generally speaking, most of the time you want to save those changes, unless you've made some kind of critical mistake, in which case you can say don't save. Okay, so save.